lot of people are starting to feel the same way I do about Nintendo. But the more people get rallied against Nintendo, the more people buy their consoles. Switch 2 has become the fastest selling console of all time. Didn't they say the same thing about Switch 1? I think that was true about Switch 1. That's crazy. Background NPC says she's done with Nintendo. I've been done with Nintendo since like 2018. But once again, I'm just some random guy. She's just some random chick. There's a bunch of just random people on the internet who are against Nintendo. A lot of people pretend that they're against Nintendo and end up buying their products anyway. And you know what? That's fine. At least just own it. I don't like Nintendo. I don't really like a lot of their games. But at the end of the day, it's all just games. It's all subjective. Everybody likes what they're gonna like. I like a lot of things that most people don't like. I don't like a lot of things that most people do like. You know, that's just the way it goes. It goes the same with everybody. Everybody's like that.
So the Switch 2 is out, and honestly, I wish I could say I was excited. I really wanted to be excited. Like many 90s babies, I grew up on Nintendo. They were my very first gaming love. And not just the games, but the feeling of them. The wonder, the warmth, the way they pulled you into a world and made it feel like home. Ocarina of Time was the one that really awoke something in me. That opening in Kokiri Forest with the Deku Tree, riding...
That was one of the very first video games that I've ever played was Ocarina of Time. I was playing that game before I could really make memories. So it's just like lodged into my psyche, my subconscious. And I've played it a lot since then. Love that game.
Epona across Hyrule Field, it all felt so massive. Like a real world was tucked inside a little cartridge. And then Majora's Mask came along, and my little self had never felt such anxiety. That eerie moon, the ticking clock, the emotional side quests that made you care so much in so little time.
Yeah, I wasn't as big a fan of Majora's Mask. I didn't really like the time concept of it. It wasn't as cool as Ocarina of Time to me. I still love that game. I still acknowledge that it's a great game. It's just, I'm not gonna go back and play that one probably.
Was the very first game that made me feel something beyond just fun. It was sad, confusing, kind of strange at times, and very deep. It wasn't just Zelda. I was obsessed with Super Mario 64, running wild through
That game is goated.
Peach's castle, jumping into paintings, discovering every secret star. That game felt like true freedom. And then there were classics like Kirby's Dream Land, Yoshi's Story, Donkey Kong 64, Star Fox, Metroid Prime, all completely different and wonderful in their own way.
Metroid Prime, the mechanics of it are weird now compared to like other FPS games, going back to play that one. But I still, once you get used to the controls, it's still really good.
Every one of them had a vibe, a soul, that Nintendo spark that made it feel like you weren't just playing, you were being let in on something very special. And then my parents bought me the original DS, and just like that, the whole thing was cracked wide open for me. That's how I found Animal Crossing Wild World.
I played my friend's DS. I would go over to his house. He'd play his PS2, I'd play his DS, or vice versa. He also had a Game Boy Advance that he gave me. One of the first Game Boy Advances. So we played a bunch of the Game Boy Advance games. He would play on the DS, I'd play the GBA. We had a few of the same games. I bought games for a handheld that I didn't have because I knew that I was going to be over there at his house a lot. And then one day, his parents were like, well, you can just have it. He's not going to use it because the DS plays Game Boy games anyway. It was great. Good times.
And I was hooked. I spent hours in that little village, rearranging furniture, writing letters, fishing for red snappers, and visiting my best friend's town during our weekly sleepovers. Even now, just hearing the soundtrack makes
we were playing Pokemon. That was our thing.
Me very emotional. It takes me right back to those quiet, cozy afternoons after school, all curled up with that clunky silver DS with nowhere else that I needed to be. Truly the epitome of nostalgia. I didn't know it then, but those games were helping to shape how I saw everything. Stories, characters, even myself, and for a while, it really felt like Nintendo understood how to make something that mattered. And it didn't stop there. I basically owned every major Nintendo console.
Same. I've owned every major console up until the Xbox One generation though. And then I just didn't own any consoles. That's when I got into PC gaming. And then I owned every console.
Starting with the N64, GameCube, Wii, DS, 3DS, even the Wii U, which, in my humble opinion, was ahead of its time, by the way. But I owned all of them.
It was like an in-between. Couldn't see it at the time whenever it was new, but it was like the precursor to the Switch. They were almost there.
And when the Switch was announced with Breath of the Wild, I was beyond excited.
Yep, I got one, like, probably 4 months after launch and got Breath of the Wild.
Very cringely crying at the announcement trailer, excited. As a Zelda fan, it was everything I'd ever wanted in a game, and to this day, it is still one of my favorites. That launch brought back so much of the old magic, which is probably why I held on for so long, and I even wanted to work for them. Like, genuinely. I applied to corporate Nintendo PR jobs probably 15 to 20 times. I'm not even exaggerating. Back in 2019, I was pursuing PR, and when I got the opportunity to go to E3 that year, the very last E3, by the way, I actually spoke with a Nintendo PR team.
RIP E3. Damn, such good memories.
In person. It was magical. The Nintendo section of the event was so overwhelming and electric, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what I want, and this is what I want to be a part of.
Bro, I remember the days of, like, gaming events, and it was actually an event and not just everybody watching a stream online. It was something that people wanted to go to, and they actually had cool stuff at these events. And then it got too corporate. I think that was the problem. It got too corporate. And then COVID happened, just fucked everything up.
So please hear me out. What we are about to discuss isn't coming from someone who's out to bash Nintendo. This is coming from someone who genuinely, wholeheartedly, even at times very cringely, loved Nintendo and their games.
I don't think it's really all Nintendo's fault that they're going the way that they're going. I think really, like everybody else, they're just guessing. They don't know what is gonna lie when tomorrow comes. So they're just gonna lie until tomorrow comes and be like, oh, well, we were wrong. Oh, it's the tariffs, that's why everything's so expensive. No, actually, everything's so expensive because you shit out a bunch of consoles everywhere to fight against scalpers. That's really why it costs so much, because they made so many. They had to balance that cost, you know.
And really believed in what I thought they stood for. But over time, I've started to realize that maybe Nintendo isn't the company I thought they were. What I've seen over the last few years is that my nostalgia goggles have been working overtime.
Yeah, they're anti-fun. They're pro-money. That's why they got rid of Pal World, or attempted to. They pretty much got rid of Pal World. They're not actually passionate about games. The only reason that they make good games is because they know that'll give them a good reputation to make even more money.
And they've kept me from really seeing the true nature of a company that I once held so dear to my heart. So, let's dive in. And let's start with the release of the Switch 2. It's officially out now, and sales are booming. Records are being broken, and over 3 million units were sold worldwide on release day. People are also loving Mario Kart World, and I'm genuinely very happy for them. Yes, the game looks like a lot of fun. I just wish I felt something, because more than anything, I just feel tired.
Yeah, I think there's just not really any good games out on it right now. There's like 2 exclusives. Well, really, like 2 big exclusives that everybody's talking about. And nothing really. There's no Zelda. There's no other, like, JRPGs or anything. There's nothing. No big releases. The console itself, although it is an upgrade of the Switch, it still has that, like, gimmicky Nintendo feel, which people are kind of tired of at this point. They didn't really achieve anything new. They just kind of refined their already outdated product, and it's still kind of outdated, but it feels premium. I'm actually excited to see what the second iteration of the Switch 2 is going to be like. I think that's actually going to be something incredible, and I'm waiting for those days. Maybe they'll drop the price of the Switch 2 and keep the new Switch 2 Pro at the normal price point. That'd be cool. Probably won't happen.
$450 or $500 if you get it bundled with Mario Kart World. This doesn't feel
And if you get the accessories, it's going to be like $700.
like a celebration of the next chapter. It feels like Nintendo seeing how far they can stretch our loyalty, how much they can charge us for something that isn't even new, just a little bit newer. And listen, I'm not here to crap on Mario Kart. I actually really like Mario Kart.
And something that was happening was like, oh, sorry, we have the Switch 2 consoles, they're sold out, but we do have the Switch 2 bundles. It comes with 2 games, $580.
It's one of those comfort games that's always been there, and it's attached to so many fond memories of playing with friends and family. But even though it looks fun, when that's the flagship title for a brand new console launch, I don't know, I personally just couldn't get behind the hype.
Yeah, they should have scattershotted. They should have just put out a whole bunch of their like Nintendo exclusive titles. They should have dropped a Kirby game, they should have dropped a Mario game, a few Mario games. They should have dropped a Zelda game right there at launch, so people would be scrambling to figure out which game they want to buy.
Feels kind of boring, safe, predictable. Nintendo isn't asking, hey, what's possible here?
Yeah, they didn't really take any risks, but I don't blame them. Corporations, when you get big enough, you less likely to take risks because something could fail and you lose a lot of money. But you could get a big win, make a lot more money, but then what do? You're gonna have to do something better than that, and it's unsustainable. I think where Nintendo's gotten themselves is kind of unsustainable.
They're asking, what can we get away with? Because $80 for Mario Kart World, that's not just a new number. It's a shift in how this industry treats its players. And what surprises me, even though it shouldn't at this point, is that it's Nintendo, of all companies, ushering in this new pricing standard. This wasn't them reluctantly following a trend that I know was inevitable, but
I think that gaming companies like Nintendo and EA and Activision, Bungie, like Microsoft Games, I think all of that, in 15 years, 20 years, they're not going to be around, or they're going to be shells of their original selves. They're going to be husks. Going to be basically dead. For one, AI is going to take over, and people just aren't going to tolerate slop anymore when they can generate their own game that's 1,000 times better and doesn't have a storefront.
this was them leading the charge, setting a precedent, establishing $80 as the new normal, and not with some expansive, genre-pushing new experience, but with an exact game formula that we've literally seen 16 times at this point. And it makes you ask, why?
Yeah, and they tried to make it open world, and there's already way better open world racing games, and it's just like, why? They did something to try and innovate, but it was really another outdated mechanic, and it wasn't as good as other games already.
Why? Because meanwhile, I'm looking at games like Helldivers 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Lies of P, Remnant 2, Clair Obscur, Baldur's Gate 3, and so many more. Games that have real creative vision, some with massive campaigns, even some with fleshed out co-op systems, launching at or below $60.
Yeah, and they all launched on Steam. How about that?
And many of these games are taking risks and really pushing boundaries, and somehow they're still finding a way to be more accessible. So when Nintendo drops a new console and leads with yet another Mario Kart at a higher price than ever before, it doesn't feel like they're honoring their legacy. It feels like they're monetizing it, like they're using—
True. I feel like all these companies, like Nintendo, are all just doing that. They're just monetizing their legacy.
it against us. Actually kind of feels like a slap in the face that stings pretty badly. And yes, to be fair, the Switch 2 is a technical upgrade.
Well, I don't buy Nintendo products anymore. It's been almost a decade at this point. 3 years to a decade. 7 years since I purchased a Nintendo product. At this point, I'm just like watching the crash out. I'm watching them fail. Watching them crumble, fall apart.
Okay, visuals, better battery, smoother performance, more storage, it's all technically better on paper, but it doesn't feel like a new era. It seems like a slightly fancier version of something that we already had. And for me personally, this realization of who Nintendo is not like a sudden moment of awakening. I've quietly been stepping back from them for a while now. And not because I stopped loving their games, but because I started seeing the patterns, the choices, the shifts. And at this point, it's pretty clear that this Switch 2 release is not just about a new price tag or a genuine attempt at launching something new, it's just another step in the same pattern that's been repeating for years. Back in the day, this used to be the company that took risks, that made magic, that redefined entire genres and invited us into something truly special. But now, kind of just seems like they're relying on the fact that we'll show up no matter what, even though they are so often very anti-consumer. It's because they know our nostalgia runs incredibly deep, and
You know, it'd be a crazy thing for them to do, a crazy innovation, an attachable screen to the Switch. Make it like a giant DS. That'd be incredible.
the more I've seen it, the harder it has been to unsee. Nintendo has mastered something I can only describe as weaponized nostalgia. They've turned our childhood memories into a soulless business model, and the part that really hurts is that it works. It worked on me for so long. I've been the Nintendo fangirl who's bought the remakes, re-releases, and updated ports, even though I knew deep down that what they were offering was not anything new. And
Yeah, eventually people get tired of it. Even people who try and defend it, that eventually they just fall off. They get disinterested, and they're not as into the thing that they used to be into when they were a kid or even a young adult. You start growing out of it, start finding new things to be interested in.
And looking back on it, I don't know. I guess it was because I didn't feel like I was buying a game. It felt like I was buying a memory. And Nintendo knows that. They know that we remember how it felt to blast through Alien Worlds and Metroid Prime, or how it felt to spend hours raising your perfect Nintendog like it was your actual childhood pet. They know we feel these titles in a way that goes beyond gameplay. And they have perfected the art of re-releasing titles, sometimes only mildly updated, at full price, locking legacy content behind paywalls and subscriptions, and offering nostalgia not as a gift, but as a heartless transaction. And just a quick side note that I found out while I was writing out this video. Do you want to talk about heartless? Because I just found out that Nintendo actually replaced the voice actress for Princess Peach after 18 years. And they didn't even tell her.
What? That's fucking insane. That sounds like Nintendo, but like, come on, give me a break.
Found out with the rest of the world when the new Mario Kart game came out. Like, that's actually insane. But anyway, to get back on track, there's always
You know, I saw something about that, but I thought it was like Nintendo fired Peach, and I thought it just meant that they're not working on a Peach game anytime soon. But that's insane.
been a huge difference between celebrating fan love and exploiting it. And for me, it seems like Nintendo has lived long enough to finally see themselves become the villain. So moving on from the Switch 2 release, at some point, I started looking at how Nintendo treats the people who love their games. And what I found honestly broke my heart a little bit, because Nintendo doesn't just protect its legacy, they police it. Let's start with content creators. This is nothing new. For many years now, Nintendo has been going after them. Streamers, YouTubers,
Yeah, that's why I don't make, like, Nintendo content. I don't play Nintendo games on my gaming channel. I don't, like, use Nintendo footage, because fuck Nintendo.
musicians for doing what, honestly, most other gaming companies celebrate, sharing their love for the brand and its IP. Somehow, I managed to kind of turn a blind eye to most of this until the Point Crow situation. He was a YouTuber who was making these really incredible Breath of the Wild mod videos. Fun, creative, and totally original. And then one day, Nintendo claimed and struck 27 videos. No warning, no conversation, just straight up attacked. And it wasn't just his Breath of the Wild mods, it was any content that featured them, including other creators who had collaborated with him. It all got wiped out like a purge. And it made me pause, because these weren't leaks and they weren't made to be malicious.
Yeah, and these are single-player fucking games. You don't want people modding your single-player games. Why? Is it because you're collecting people's data and it messes with the data? That's probably the reason.
It really was just fan content that was made out of love. And Nintendo really cracked down on it like it was a threat. And this was not an isolated case. One that has really stuck with me was Gil Vasunner. And if you
Being able to mod Breath of the Wild would get me back into Breath of the Wild. Like, if they allowed mods and it was easy to mod. That would be super innovative. But they don't like innovation because they're afraid of it. They don't want people to innovate more than they do. And nowadays, they're pretty shit at it. Oh, you know, we're going to turn the Joy-Con into a mouse.
If you didn't know, Gilva-Sunner's channel used to be one of the only places online where you could find full Nintendo soundtracks. For years, Nintendo basically had these locked up very tight unless you were able to purchase a physical CD from Nintendo themselves. They weren't on Spotify, Apple Music, Nintendo's YouTube channel, no official platform to listen to any of it. And Gilva wasn't even trying to profit from this. There were no ads or monetization, just the original music uploaded for fans who wanted to relive the moments those songs came from. It was really a gift to the community.
Yeah, but Nintendo wanted to monetize that, but they're also too stupid to actually monetize it well. That's generally the case.
And then it was gone. Nintendo initially sent over 1,300 takedown notices, and after that, it was followed by another 2,200. The entire channel was essentially wiped out, and Gilva closed up shop. And I know this might sound a little bit dramatic, but that was kind of a big turning point for me when it came to how I viewed them.
Yeah, and just think about it. How much money that they lost, because let's be real, they lost a little bit of money, but they also had to pay people to do all these things and take it down, and they go to court with people, and it's just like, how much money are you losing to justify how much money you're paying to fight against it? And a lot more people would love you, a lot more people would get your products if you would be nicer to the consumers. But no, gotta monetize everything. Gotta be the only one who innovates.
Just a little side note / confession, but as a former Disney adult who has learned the error of her ways, I feel pretty qualified to say this. Nintendo really is the Disney of gaming. They're wholesome on the surface, very full of magic and memories, but underneath, there's a very quiet, corporate, malicious control. And both companies know how to tug at your childhood heartstrings while handing out copyright strikes and ulterior motives on the side. At the time, I was watching.
Yeah, and they love money. If a little kid really loved Nintendo and wanted to be buried in a Nintendo coffin when he died, and he dies, and they bury him in a Nintendo coffin like a Mario coffin, Nintendo would probably come after them. Disney did that. Pretty sure it was Disney. Was it Disney or Sony? Because it was Spider-Man, wasn't it? That's a thing. Look it up.
Watching this unfold, the more I sat with what happened to Gilva-Sunner, the more it made me wonder, why is Nintendo's music so locked away to begin with? These soundtracks have some of the most iconic songs in gaming. They were emotional, timeless, and they were very deeply personal for so many of us. And like I said earlier, Animal Crossing Wild World was my comfort game. And yet, at the time, there was basically no way for me to go listen to it legally. It felt like...
Yeah, I use a lot of video game music, but I do a lot of research to find out what video game music is generally allowed to be used in my videos. None of it's Nintendo stuff.
Nintendo had locked away their history in a vault, and they just would not let anyone open it up. And from there, I started noticing so many other examples. Fan games getting shut down, community passion projects being wiped out, and...
Yeah, I don't like fan games being shut down. That really shows that they're trying to lock down innovation, because they can't have anybody making better games than them. They can't be stuck in a Bethesda situation where everybody loves somebody else's game more than their game.
Listen, I get it. IP protection is legally within their right, but it all...
Yeah, I think we need to get rid of these stupid IP laws. It's so gross.
Just felt like they were going out of their way to crack down on this, acting very aggressive, cold, and even heartless. Especially when you look around at many other companies, Sega, Capcom, Xbox, PlayStation, even some indie studios, and you see them amplifying creators, lifting them up, letting the fans be a part of the legacy. But Nintendo doesn't really do that. They continue to pull the plug again and again, and over time, I started wondering if maybe I had just been giving them the benefit of the doubt simply because I grew up loving them. So at this point, after the Gilva-Sunner takedown, I had already started to feel uneasy. The creator takedowns, the fan projects, the legacy content, it was all feeling a lot more controlling than caring. But
yeah, I generally just stay away from Nintendo content or anything close to it. Like, not even taking the chance. I'm just gonna completely ignore them and forget they exist. Unless I'm reacting to a video like this, and then I'm just gonna make fun of them because they're garbage.
the moment that truly stopped me in my tracks was when I heard the story of Gary Bowser. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know about any of this until I listened to an episode of Darknet Diaries, which, by the way, Jack does an incredible job explaining all of this. I'll link it in the description for you. Now, I obviously knew at this point Nintendo could be very protective of their IP, but this this was on a whole other level. Gary was a part of a group called Team Executor, and what they did was build and sell mod chips, little pieces of hardware that you could install in your Nintendo consoles to run homebrew apps, custom firmware, and yes, pirated games. But
That's really cool. Man, that's really cool. We need more stuff like this in our lives.
people also use those mods for stuff that wasn't necessarily piracy. They used it to run backups of games they already owned, or just experiment with the system for their own personal use. Things that were really
Piracy is a service issue. If it was easier and better to collect games online, people wouldn't pirate, or you'd have way less pirates.
never going to be available through Nintendo directly. Gary essentially became the fall guy for the entire organization, and Nintendo came down on him in a way that was very extreme. In 2020, Gary was arrested at gunpoint in the Dominican Republic and extradited to the US. By 2022, he'd been sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay $14.5 million in damages, $4.5 million in restitution, and then another $10 million from a civil suit. And
Yep, Nintendo will have you locked the fuck up.
after he got out early, he still owed all of it, and he started paying Nintendo back 25 to 30% of his monthly income, which at one point was just $25
Like, Nintendo actually put a guy in prison. That's fucking insane.
a month from his prison library job. He'll basically be paying them for the rest of his life. When I heard that, my stomach dropped. I genuinely felt heartbroken for him. Yes, what he and the rest of the team were doing was illegal, and they did profit off of it, but Gary was just one man. And are we really saying the punishment fits the crime here? Because whatever legal lines were crossed, this felt less like justice and more like hatred and wrath. And
Yep, and I don't think that piracy is inherently bad, especially when it's against a company like Nintendo, who will take you down at any point, and also seems like a company that would just delete your game, especially with the Switch 2. Because the game's not on the cartridge, and they can shut down your console at any time. They can also just shut down your game at any time. They can just delete your library, delete your account. They seem like that kind of company, and they totally 100% are that kind of company.
not just for what he did, but for daring to even touch Nintendo's closed system. And the part that really got me with this is Nintendo tried to get Sony and Microsoft to back them up here, to join the lawsuit and make it a united front against piracy. Both companies said no. Both Sony and Xbox, billion-dollar publishers in their own right.
Yeah, the harder you fight against piracy, the worse it gets, by the way. Yeah, you don't want to do that. You don't want to rile up pirates, because they'll just crash out even harder.
Refused to be a part of it. Even they seemed to think that it was too far. And again, I am not here to outright defend piracy, really. There's a whole conversation to be had about access, preservation, and ethics, but this felt incredibly cruel and predatory. Nintendo did not just want to stop Gary from what he was doing, they wanted to make him an example. And for me, this was the defining moment when I knew Nintendo was no longer the company that I had loved for decades. And if you thought Gary Bowser's case was just a one-off or a legal overreach in a rare situation, it wasn't. Because not long after that, Nintendo set its sights on something much bigger and arguably much more telling. You might have already guessed it, but I'm talking about Palworld. You probably remember when it blew up. A very weird, chaotic blend of Pokemon-style creature collecting and open-world survival mechanics. It was very messy, it was wild, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, it really sucks, man. Such a good game. They probably should have known, though. They probably did know, but not to the extent Nintendo would go to. They weren't thinking about the patents or anything like that. Or they probably would have worked around that and would have had time to actually think about how to work around it.
People were very obsessed, myself included, and yes, come on, it clearly was inspired by Pokemon. That's not a secret. You could throw a spear, you could collect little pals, you ride them, you battle them. It was Pokemon adjacent, absolutely. But here's the thing. It wasn't a copy. The characters were different. The art direction, tone, many mechanics were different. It took a very familiar genre and gave it a bold, slightly unhinged twist. And for the first time in years, fans were saying,
Yeah, you can't innovate. You can't do a better thing than we can. Because this is like Pokemon. None of them played it. Nobody at Nintendo even thought about playing it.
why doesn't Nintendo try stuff like this? Instead of taking that feedback in stride, instead of rising to the challenge, listening, learning, evolving, Nintendo did what they've been doing for a while now. They sued. Together with the Pokemon Company, they
Yeah, lawfare. Corporations love it.
filed a patent infringement lawsuit against the Palworld dev team. Not over character design, surprisingly, not even over branding, but over mechanics. Things like throwing a pal spear to catch creatures, using them in combat, riding them across the world. And because of all of this, the Palworld team had to actually go in and change all of those features. They stripped out mechanics that players loved, not because they were unethical, but because they simply couldn't defend themselves against a legal juggernaut. And just like with the Gary Bowser case, Nintendo tried to bring other companies into the fight. Sony and Microsoft were reportedly approached to back them again here, and again, they declined. They did not want to be a part of it. And all of this says a lot, because this could have been a big moment for Nintendo, a wake-up call, an opportunity for them to ask, what is it that people are responding to? Why are they so excited about this? What can we learn from this? But instead of innovation, they chose litigation.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy about marketing and how the market works? By the way, people will eat shit. People will eat shit for a long time. And you'll have, like, the biggest, most popular console, the biggest, most popular thing of all time. It keeps getting bigger and bigger, more popular, but more and more complaints about it. People are getting tired of the thing. They're not really innovating. Too much slop. And then suddenly, it just drops off immediately and everything crashes. That's what happened to Atari. Then Nintendo came in and saved it. They saved the day. And I feel like that's what's going to happen with Nintendo. Where can they go from the Switch 2? Really? They can do like a Switch 2 Pro. But what's the Switch 3 going to be? What's beyond the Switch 2? They're going to have to come up with something crazy.
And to me, it was not a stand for creativity or IP protection. The Pokemon formula has been around for literally 30 years. We all know what it is and where it comes from, and Palworld was not going to change that. No. This was Nintendo being a bully and swinging at anything that threatened the comfort of their complacency. They had an opportunity to grow, to evolve, to take advantage of someone already laying the groundwork for them, but instead, they chose violence. And after everything, the creator takedowns, the lawsuits, the silencing of innovation, you think maybe Nintendo would at least try to get one thing right: their legacy. I remember when Nintendo Online was first announced. It sounded like such a win, a way to legally revisit classic titles, play old favorites, dive back into the library that built up
Yep, and it was a complete disaster. Nothing worked, and it wasn't the same.
this brand. And at first, I was so hopeful, but the reality has been frustrating at best. Games get added randomly. Some months it's not much. Other months it's one obscure NES title no one really asked for. Entire consoles like Game Boy Advance or N64 still feel incomplete, and sometimes titles will just disappear without warning or explanation. They're just gone. And now, with the launch of the Switch 2, I thought maybe they would just try to clean things up a bit. GameCube has finally joined the retro lineup, which is very
If they hadn't muddied the whole IP system and the whole copyright system, made everything worse, they would have just been able to run their own emulators. But instead, the better service is just to run our own emulators.
awesome. But they only added 3 games at launch: Wind Waker, Soul Calibur 2, and F-Zero GX. Like, yeah, that's a cool trio, I guess, but it's also pretty bare bones for a console with so many legendary titles. And yes, I know more are coming, but why launch with so few? Why not take the easy win here and give your fans what they've been begging you for years? Beyond the
Because they suck. They're incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. They're just guessing. And then they forget what they're doing and move on to something else, or something like, or they have to put out a fire. There's a fire at the company, so they have to put hands on it, and then they forget that they have to go back to their job.
catalog, the performance isn't always there either. Sometimes there's lag, some games have awkward control schemes, others don't support cloud saves. It doesn't really feel like a premium service. It feels like something Nintendo begrudgingly maintains, and definitely not something that they can be proud of. The thing is I've always wanted to support something like this. I actually am very happy to pay to play these games legally. I want to revisit the titles that shaped me in a clean, easy way, but Nintendo has made it so hard. It's like they're sitting on this treasure trove of nostalgia, this very beautiful, powerful legacy, and instead of
Yeah, the reason that I don't play Nintendo games, that I don't buy their products, really, is because I can't get them on my PC. I want to be able to know that I could have the digital file forever. I don't want the Switch online servers to go down and then I just lose access to all of my games or a bunch of games that I paid for that I just want to have forever. And I want DRM free files mostly. I'd rather have all DRM free files, be able to move the files around how I please. The day Nintendo starts allowing stuff like that is the day I start buying Nintendo products again.
Of sharing it or celebrating it with us, they keep it to themselves and withhold it. They kind of hold it over us like drugs, honestly, banking on the fact that we'll continue to play the part of the willing addicts who will be so happy for even the tiniest drop. It really is heartbreaking, but at this point, I'm not even really mad about it. I'm just tired and maybe still a little bit sad. Now, again, to be clear, this video is not meant to shame anybody. If you bought the Switch 2 or you're a part of Nintendo Online and you're loving it, I think that's great.
No shame if you love the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2 and just like Nintendo products. No shame at all. I'm just over here like, there are way better games. There are other games out there. Too many games. Can't play them all. So I'm just gonna not pay thousands of dollars to play all the Switch games, pay hundreds of dollars to play all of the past games that are on PC. That's just me.
Truly, I am not here to steal joy away from anyone. This video really is just to talk about how I can't ignore how much my own relationship with Nintendo has changed over the years. And I don't love them anymore. Not the company, not like I used to. And that's difficult to say out loud because I grew up on these games. I spent summers chasing stars in Mario 64, winters decorating my Animal Crossing home, racing my siblings in Mario Kart, riding Epona across Hyrule Field like it was the most magical thing in the world. And for me, these were not just games. They were a part of my childhood. And that's why all of this hurts so much, because the company that once led with a full heart and love for gaming feels like it's running on autopilot, giving us the absolute bare minimum. Comfortable, safe, lazy, greedy. We're getting less and paying more. And look, the industry as a whole is a bit of a mess right now, but it's still fair for us to ask.
Getting less and paying more, that's exactly what corporations want, and they want us to get less and less and pay more and more. That's why skins are going up in price in video games. Even though they're fake, why are skins going up? Even if inflation is a thing, why does the skins in a video game matter? Just like in all games that are coming out, they're just a little bit more expensive every time. Every time a new game comes out.
For better, to feel valued as customers, to want these companies to care. And for a long time, I really believed that Nintendo did, that they were different, that they stood for something. But now it's hard to see how that could still be true. I always joke that my relationship with Nintendo is super toxic because even after all of this, even after how I've seen how they treat their consumers and fans, part of me still hopes that they'll change because they could. It really would be so easy.
Oh, they're gonna change. They're gonna change all right. Right now, they don't have microtransactions riddled in most of their games, like Nintendo exclusive games. But as soon as they need that extra money, it's gonna happen. There's gonna be microtransactions in the Mario games, man. It's coming. They're already putting like little mini expansions and mini DLC in games. That's where it starts.
If they wanted to, they could be the company that supports creators instead of silencing them.
Yeah, that's not happening, bro. No, this shit's just gonna keep getting worse and worse and worse till somebody else takes them over, or they're just gonna completely crumble. And hey, they might even sell the most games that they've ever sold, most consoles they've ever sold, but then they're gonna have to do it again. And if they manage to do it again, then they're gonna have to do it again. And eventually they're gonna hit a ceiling. And I feel like that ceiling isn't all that high anymore. And they're getting close. They're getting close to hitting the ceiling.
Shares their legacy instead of locking it away, prioritizes joy over control, and evolves instead of punishing innovation. I really would love nothing more than to fall back in love with them. But right now, it just seems like Nintendo is going to keep being Nintendo. Just very stuck and too happy to stay that way. The love that I once had for them was so real and the magic really mattered. But the company behind that magic, it feels further away than ever.
Yep. And what's really gonna suck is, my prediction is the Switch 2, fastest selling console of all time, because everybody who wants a Switch 2 is getting a Switch 2, like right now. But what are they gonna do if more people don't buy the Switch 2? Like, people have to keep buying it, and they don't have any games. They don't have any way to pull people in. They're gonna have to have like a new Zelda, new Smash Brothers, new full Mario game, like a Mario Odyssey 2. And they're gonna have to have it quick, because there's not much time. People are gonna be exhausted. They're gonna be moving on, especially with the new console generation coming up. Other consoles are about to start getting announced. And when people are thinking about a $700 PlayStation 6 or a $600 Switch 2, because it's gonna be $450 plus a game plus other stuff, especially if you've got more than one kid that's playing it, might as well get a PlayStation 6. The old controllers still work on the PlayStation 6. Still have the entire game library.
If you made it to the end of this video, seriously, thank you so much. And I would love to hear your story. What made you fall in love with Nintendo? Are you still in love with them? Or have you also had a bit of a breakup with them like me? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, Nintendo, I don't see how they're gonna last for much longer. Once again, I'm gonna say like 15 years, a bunch of these companies, they're not gonna be the same. They have already hit their ceiling by that time, and they're crumbling, and they're freaking out. That's all I got. Buy a t-shirt down there in the description. I'm out.